Hey everyone, welcome to week 8 in Integrated Web Concepts. This puts us at the halfway and slightly beyond point. Today I want to talk about some considerations from the graphic design perspective, and this week we'll be working on wireframing, web layouts, and icons. So, ready to move on. The first step here is to take your hand-drawn wireframes that you worked on last week and start to move those into Adobe XD. From there, and once probably at the same time, you're also going to start designing your icons and your button set for this e-commerce site. And when we're done, we're going to actually share these design specs with the developers so that they can create the custom site that we have envisioned. So step 1 is going to be take your hand-drawn wireframes that we mentioned last week and get into Adobe XD. So the idea behind these basic wireframes is that they're free of any finalized color and written copy or anything extra. So this is going to allow you and the developers and your stakeholders, meaning the people that you're working on the site for, your clients, to focus solely on the functionality, the underlying structure, and how users are going to use this. So again, we're not putting in the color logos or the fonts, anything from the branding guide yet. We are simply going to work with a very basic wireframe, and we're going to share that with people to expose any flaws or sometimes just leaps in logic, something that we assume or that we do, but our actual user would not think to do that within our e-commerce site. So it's important not to skip this step. So using Adobe XD, which is software that our designers have as part of their Adobe Creative Cloud suite, they are going to start with basic shapes. But when I say they're the ones who actually have the software, but this is a team project. Marketing is heavily involved in this. Developers are heavily involved in this. You are going to be outputting this as code. So first of all, first tip, start with basic shapes. You're going to select an appropriate size for your first artboard based on the device that you're going to be using this design on. So an e-commerce site, I expect to access that from my computer when I'm home. I have a very large Mac screen. I expect to use it from my iPad, and I expect to use it from my phone. I expect it to work equally over all 3 devices. So you need to think about that, and the probably logical step, although I'm not sure, and I shouldn't say this since it's not my specialty, but I'm assuming you guys are going to definitely build a website and then build in the mobile and responsive design that will allow it to show on other devices. As you add the objects, think about the purpose and the intent of each one and how you're going to want the end user to interact with it, and keep this very simple. So header and a few pictures. This is step 1. You're also going to use shapes as placeholders for future photos. So rectangles or circles can serve as that. You can see right here we have some basic rectangles, but with the left and right icon and the play icon, I think we can all guess that this is going to be an image gallery that we can play through, either using the buttons or the play symbol here, or the red left and right buttons. A cool feature of Adobe XD is that it has something called symbols, and designers, you'll remember Illustrator has this as well. Lots of Adobe products do actually. So the goal here of all 3 of you as a team are you're trying to display items that are going to interact very similarly from one screen to another. So your menu bars, your headers are going to be the same in every screen. So there's no sense and no purpose in redrawing them each and every time. Once you've drawn out what your header looks like, you can convert it into symbols, and then you can plop them into different artboards wherever you need them. So your header you design once, save it as a symbol, and on your next artboard you plop it at the top again. Cool thing also, like global colors and global things in our other Adobe family, is that if we update it in one place as a symbol, it will update everywhere. Then you're going to be arranging your artboards. The graphic designers are going to be doing this in the software, but this is, again, a group effort. You have to think of the logical flow, and you have been in the last few weeks. Your user journey and your navigation sitemap. So you're going to come up with the logical flow or order of the pages by actually arranging your artboards left to right and then eventually linking them. We're going to design using grids. Grids are really important because the graphics will actually snap to them. And that's important for alignment and other layout, keeping our layout very similar and aesthetically pleasing. This is also going to give you a quick idea of measurements while laying out objects or text on your artboard. So how do they relate? If I had to scale them up, how far away should this element be from another? Then animating your wireframe. So this is the cool part about Adobe XD. You link them together, which is called wiring the app, and it actually shows how they interact. So when somebody clicks on this word or button, it takes them to this part, either the sub part of the page or a new page. How it does that, we can actually set up in Adobe XD, and the developers can code for that later. So is it going to dissolve, ease out, ease in, swipe left, swipe right? However you want it to transition, that's something that you can program in at this time. And then finally, you can actually share this wireframe. So this is where we want to get. Preview your work. You can share the design by sending a link or embedding it in a web page, and you can then ask for comments. You can also record a walkthrough as a movie file. So within XD, still in the design phase, we can come over to this up sharing icon, which by the way is yet another icon that we all understand now. And when we click on it, we can share a link, and this is going to generate a page that I'll show you later in this talk that actually has all of the design specs right there. But you can see this is a very basic wireframe. We have not yet gotten to the point of adding in our colors, our type, everything else. This is where you see, does this work? Does the navigation make sense? Is my end user going to understand it? Can they use this as a way to navigate through my e-commerce site? Next thing that you're going to want to think about is designing your icons and your buttons for e-commerce. And we did talk about this earlier in this class, and you might have even included some in your branding guide. So this may be a bit of a review, or you might want to look over what you did in phase 1 if you've already tackled this and maybe do some tweaking. So there's two kinds of icons, pictograms and ideograms. A pictogram is a picture that literally shows what the item is about. So when we think of a phone, not that many of you have ever seen a phone look like this, we know that means to call someone or use the phone. The camera usually indicates take a picture. The folder could be to file something or save something, and the envelope, again, is for email. So they're very literal. Ideograms are more abstract. They're just shapes or symbols that have come to represent something that we all agree upon. So an X typically means to us no or cancel, stop. This down arrow with a line, whoops, typically means download. The right-facing triangle means play. So whether it's a pictogram or an ideogram, you need to think about this. And icons can be used in 3 different ways. And the first one is more as a decoration. So when we look at this web page, just a little screenshot, it's really just helping with the visual design. It's reinforcing the brand of this, the colors, the whimsical feeling, and they're helpful in aiding the text. So what is Allison's Brand School? The question marks aid that. Audio courses, the icon of the earpods helps reinforce that. And then when these are used later on the web page or the e-commerce site, they help with retention. So later on when we see things about following our audio courses or her brand workshops, those same icons come into play and help with retention. You have to remember to follow the branding guidelines. So if I go back to this site, which is Allison's, oh gosh, I forgot, Brand Workshop, I think is the name of it, or Allison's Brand School. You can tell from this one screenshot what the aesthetic is here. the gradient, the hand-drawn icons, the imagery that's being used, very friendly. Not that this isn't friendly, but Tractor Supply has a different brand guideline, and you can tell that their colors are red and black. You can tell that they have a shape for their logo, this four-sided, boy, what would that be? Trapezoid? I don't remember, is their emblem. So it's part of their logo. We see it here again. But these are some icons that fit their brand and follow their guidelines. Number 2, icons can be used as navigation to help your user move through the site and understand some of the functions. So we know things like a right arrow means there's something to the right, or go to the next page. The little triangle down here, GPS, that kind of symbolizes some sort of map placement, at least to me, and others. So we easily can use icons to help with our navigation. If you think of this in terms of software, the icons at the top of the software are often visual representations of what actually happens in the software. And then finally, they can be used for information. So they can inform users of tasks that they need to do or statuses. So in this case, I can see with the green check mark that I have successfully added something to my cart. If it were red and an X, I would probably know that something happened that went wrong. Over here, the shopping cart is fairly universal, where you can view your cart. I know there's something in it. And we can also use icons for categorizing things. So you can shop by category. And yes, this is Tractor Supply again. Their same emblem shape is being used again, part of their brand guidelines with the red. And we can see, oh, I bet this has something to do with horses, or this has something to do with shoes and home goods. So icons can be very useful. If this were just a text list that was bulleted, and there were 5 by 15 things in a row, pretty boring. Visually, I can navigate around here very quickly. When it comes to making your icons, marketing students, this is something that might fall into your lap in the real world, but certainly it's something that designers are often asked to do on their own when not given a brand guide to start with. And it's just research. What are different things that people may think of instead of the word you're thinking of? So an example here is the help menu. So these icons are shared language that quickly convey meaning. The question mark is probably the most universal help icon menu, but other icons that might be used are the life preserver, or perhaps the person obviously ready to help you with chat. So doing a Google search is a great way to begin. So here's a search for the help icon. And you can see we have quite a few showing up here in different categories, but the question mark comes up, maybe helping someone off the ground, the life preserver again. Maybe there's more that you weren't thinking about. So do a metaphor research process and think of other words, metaphors that might stand for the word help or replace the word help, such as support, assistance, maybe a tutorial. And then do searches for a support icon, assistance icon, tutorial icon. Really widen out your thoughts, and remember, you're targeting this to your target demographic, your user persona. What would Karen expect to find? What does Karen think? Does she think of the word help, or does she think of the word assistance? So you have to think of this in terms of the client at hand. Some other resources to help you. Icons8.com and the nounproject.com. Great resources out there. Often they're used just for inspiration. Go and look around, get some ideas, maybe hand draw your own if that's part of your brand aesthetic. But if you choose, and if these match your brand guidelines, you can use any of these icons from these 2 sites as well. There are many, many icons that are pre-built out there. Just they have to match your brand guidelines. And the third overall phase, from my point of view, graphic design, is when you get this done and you've agreed on your wireframe and you're really down to the brass tacks, it's time to share your design specs with the developers. You've all agreed on the wireframing, how it flows from one page to another. So by sharing these design specs, it's going to improve the communication between designers and developers. So back in Adobe XD, you can generate the design specs for the developers. You can tell them things like the coloring, the formatting, the sizing and positioning that you have designed. Again, back in Adobe XD, once you're done designing, you switch to the prototype tab up here. And on the far right, again, is that upload or share icon. And from here, we're going to simply publish the design specs. And that is going to take you to a pop-up window where you give it a name, and it's really important that you give it a good name and perhaps version it, so V1. The example I took screenshots of was made for an iPhone specifically, so the units are based on iOS measurement. You're going to be setting this up in a website development mode, so you'll be dealing with pixels. But from here, you can copy the link and simply send it to your designer or developers, or you can open the page directly, which is what they will be doing with that link. And as you can see, it generates a page on adobe.com, specs, and then a long name. So it's a live website that anybody can go to or on your web browser. And what it's going to show you is all of the artboards and all that are linked from your home page that you can get to one way or another from there. If you want details on it, you can either select the artboard itself or individual objects to view more details. So in this case, if we were to click right here on the text in our properties panel, in this browser, this is not in the software anymore, this is the browser window that you're sharing with other people, we do see our text, 30-point text. We see the font style that's being used. Whoops, that's a measurement. That's an X and Y coordinate. Sorry about that. It's 86-point text, left alignment on 86-point spacing. Color is white. If this were a different color, you could click over here on the drop-down box and you can get the hexadecimal, the RGB, or the HSLA color codes. And the developers can click on that, click on the color, and it will copy that code and they can paste it into their code. They can also look at measurements. So again, clicking over in this area, we can see that this bottom sign up area is 375 by 63. And if they were designing this literally just for an iPhone app, their measurements would be done. The cool part is that all of this is live and it updates. So if you go back in Adobe XD and make a change, so in version 1 we had a yellow footer. If we go back and make that footer be this hot pink, if we just hit save, it would overwrite the original, which is maybe what your intent is, or we can save it as a version, SIA version 2. And then you can share the different versions with the stakeholders until you come up with the one that's correct and done. And then at that point, you can delete any of these off of your Adobe page if you don't need them anymore. But versioning is really important as well. So these design specs provide a great way to hand off your prototype to the developers and let them get to work. So that is it for this week. You need to get these wireframes, the basic wireframes, done and work with the marketers and the developers, work with your entire team about, does this make sense? Is the flow correct? Are end users going to understand how to use our website and buy something, which is the goal here? And you're going to also start really thinking about your icons and your buttons. Eventually, in the next week or two, you're actually going to hand all this off to the developers. So don't delay. I want you to take a look at Blackboard as to what's actually due this week or what the expectations are for this week. And then also look at our little view ahead. Paul put together what's coming in the next few weeks. You can see the overview. It's important to know that phase 2 is going to wrap up right around Thanksgiving. And then you're just going to have time to really tweak and finalize it. There's only 2 weeks after we come back from Thanksgiving break. For my designers, I'm going to have more links on Adobe XD to really help you with that. And hopefully you did dive into it last week and get your feet wet so you're ready to hit the ground running. So thanks everyone and have a great week.